Have you ever had that thought of, I'm not good enough? And at the same time, you have a yearning for something big, but it seems too scary to pursue because it's so big? If you can relate to this, you definitely want to stay tuned to today's episode with Lauren Guerrieri. Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Vasallo. And each week, I will bring you amazing guests so that you can tap into the courage to break out of old patterns and live your soul's purpose. Before we get into this episode, if by the end you enjoyed it, please follow, rate, review, and share the podcast so we can reach more people. Because here's the thing, I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please take action by rating, reviewing, following, and sharing the podcast. We can only do this together. Check out the link in the show notes to see how this is done. And make sure to stay until the end to claim some free gifts I have for you. Welcome to another episode of The Courage to Be. And today we have Lauren Guerrieri, or you can call her Lo too. So Lo, share with us a little bit about your journey, how you've arrived to where you're at and what kind of work you're doing in the world so that people can get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you, Tanya, so much for this opportunity to be here and be with your community. I'm very, very grateful. Yeah, my background is definitely in coming to my own spiritual awareness. I struggled a lot as a kid with worthiness and with being deeply empathic and not really knowing what to do with that gift or seeing it as a gift. And also being on this very intense path of personal growth in my life where I focused a lot on career, and I had a long career in corporate America. And now I'm in this space of really serving as many people as I can in this lifetime, and so one of the things I'm here to really teach about is abundance consciousness. And abundance is obviously so much more than money. It's about living a fulfilled life and having all areas of our life be fulfilling. But I really see that a lot of people's pain comes from their wounds with money. And I think if we heal our connection with money and we see money as energy and we really go there, so much more can unfold in our lives. I also am really here to teach humans about the power we have within. I just believe we're a soul having a human experience, and that our consciousness is more expanded and infinite than we can sometimes grasp. And I think that's why people struggle and stay small in their life, because they don't see themselves that way. They don't see themselves connected, right? They're not as connected to their soul. And I think I'm really here to help people connect to their soul. So my own journey is an ongoing evolution of personal growth. I experience a lot of awakening spiritually, and also my own challenges that take me through lessons that then allow me to create for others to learn. And my prayer is that whatever suffering I've gone through, I can help other people not have that suffering. So it's a very spiritual journey, and I'm here to really help activate more spiritual awareness on this planet.
Wow, that is just beautiful. And I have so many questions to ask throughout that. So tell us a little bit about how you shifted from corporate into working for yourself and these awakenings along the way.
That was a few years ago, actually. I think there's people that have a similar journey to me where there's a yearning inside of you that you're here for something big. And a lot of us, including myself, struggle with that because it feels too big. It feels like, can I do this? And can I put myself out there? Can I speak truth to power? Can I live a different life than just what's expected of us? And so for me, of course, following that path was easy in some ways, but it also made me hide. And I was really hiding for a lot of it.
What do you mean by you were hiding? Like, let's go deeper into that.
Hiding is a really important thing for anyone who's listening to understand, because I think a lot of us are doing it even when we think we're not. Like that concept of hiding really shattered my whole world when I figured it out. And for me, what it means is using things in our life. It could be relationships, it could be career. In my case, it was definitely career, to hide behind so that we're not being fully seen as the fullness of who we are. And we're able to hide behind others. We're able to hide behind a place or a person or a thing or a company. And it allows us to play very small and keep ourselves small. But we all know, and in my own experience, I was living from this deep place of pain and inauthenticity, really. And I was not living from my own power. So hiding is a way for us to try to escape the human, like to be fully seen as a human and in all of our facets and our complexities and our truths.
How did you start coming out, let's say, that from that hiding, like at what point do you realize that it's more painful to stay in hiding and not be authentically you? And how do you start coming out from that hiding?
Well, the truth is, what really happened for me was I left corporate and took that leap and then had like a health thing go down. And it was actually something that happened that was related to my heart. And then nothing ended up being wrong with my heart when I did a lot of testing. And what I realized, it was heartbreak that was running the show. And heartbreak is one example. I mean, a lot of people have heartbreak, right, in different ways, but heartbreak for me was running the show and was the thing that was keeping me hiding, because I learned along the way through different painful experiences that it's too painful to be seen. That if I'm seen, if I show who I really am, then I won't be accepted or whatever. And then once my heart started to physically manifest with pain and with different things, then I had to start to really look at that, because the human experience, we all know, like our body speaks to us through the ways that we choose to live every day. So choosing to hide took a toll on my physical body. And that's when I had to break the cycle, because once it takes a toll on the physical body, then we have no other choice. Like our body, and I would encourage everyone to think about like how much your body endures for you. Pain, negative self-talk, just lack of courage or not choosing courage and not choosing happiness. Our body's holding all of that pain. And eventually it hits a wall. It comes knocking, like you have to start addressing this. So for me, that was one piece. But another piece was also acknowledging what people would reflect back to me in one-on-one conversations and relationships, where it's like people reflected back to me my gifts as a healer, as a teacher, as a guide, as a speaker. And through that reflection, I started to really say, what can I do with this to help more people? Because if I'm having this in one-on-one relationships, then what would happen if I directed that energy into launching my business and actually launching, opportunities for people to come into community to talk about living a different way. And abundance consciousness is a very different way than on this planet. Like Earth, and in my opinion, like Mother Earth is so abundant and we can't see it, right? And we're taking a lot from Mother Earth without putting a lot back in, but we're also like, it's never enough. Like abundance is finding that enoughness, So when I didn't feel enough, I was constantly seeking more. But when I started to heal and work on myself to feel enough, I didn't need more.
Oh, that is so beautifully said, because it intertwines so much with the work that I'm putting out there too. And we need more and more women, men putting this type of conversation out into the world. Although I really appreciate that. What were some of the gifts that were showing up that were being reflected back to you that you could I'm sure you knew deep down but maybe needed the permission and needed that constant reflection. Because I feel like our gifts many times can overlap with our purpose, with our mission, like it's just a reminder of, like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, what is my purpose on this
Yeah.
planet or in
Yeah.
this lifetime and stuff. But could you share with us, what were those gifts that were being reflected back to you that you started becoming conscious and then eventually embodying?
Such a great question. The biggest piece is that people always reflect back to me that I inspire them to grow and inspire them in general. Like they leave a conversation with me and feel unstoppable, which makes me feel like, wow, like, is that like, you really feel that way, because it's a huge power and it comes with a huge responsibility for me. But I genuinely can see people so deeply that when I talk to them, I can see beyond what they even think they need. It's an intuitive gift for sure. I have a lot of intuitive gifts. Many people do, many women do, and they're coming online more and more during this time, because we can't just look at what's in front of us, right? So a lot of people would tell me that they felt a shift in their energy when they left me. And sometimes they would use that language and sometimes they would not, but it all came down to that. I also it was reflected back to me that my voice has like a certain way about it where this is a huge responsibility for me of how I use my voice and what I speak with. But when like people could hear someone else say the same thing, but when I say it, it hits deep, like it hits people differently. And that when I would hear that over and over again, you have a powerful voice, like your voice, your voice, your voice. And we know we speak things into existence. I mean, our voice is one of the most powerful tools, right, that we're given in this human experience. And when that was reflected back to me over and over again, I realized that my voice carries power. And with that power, of course, comes responsibility in terms of what am I going to use that voice to preach? Because I could use it in ways that are for my gain, but I can't do it. It's not in my integrity. It's not what my mission's here to do. My mission in general is to help people see the power they have within.
Beautiful mission. I love that. I love seeing the power that we have within, because many times we don't see it. And so the gift that others had on you, the impact of just reflecting back about your gifts, your inspiration, your voice, the power of your voice, how you inspire others, that's a beautiful impact that they're having on you. And now the ripple effect of you reflecting it back to others and holding that space, especially for those that can't see that power within. I think sometimes we get blinded, especially as we get older. We might see it as kids, and then society, beliefs, parents, teachers start squishing it down and squishing it down and squishing it down. So this is beautiful. We've tackled the gifts, and talk to me a little bit about your journey leaving corporate America. How scary was that? Was it not scary at all? And if it was scary, how did you talk yourself out of that? I mean, we know that you had heartbroken, manifested in a physical ailment. And like you said, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I do believe our bodies are so wise. And I loved how you said they also hold so much for us, the negative, the pain, the emotions, from the moment we're born, but they're also constantly communicating to us, like our bodies are constantly telling us what's next. Why am I having a pain up here in my neck? Why am I having, who was great for that? One of my mentors, Louise Hay, I got certified with her. If you ever looked at her dictionary of ailments, and she was not a doctor, but after having thousands of clients and patients and hearing over and over, about the complaint of migraines or the complaint of cancer or the complaint of whatever, fill in the blank of whatever health issue, she ended up putting a book together. I think it's in You Can Heal Your Life, if I remember correctly. And at the end, there's like a little dictionary with that. But share with us a little bit of those fears and how you overcame them.
Oh, overcoming fear. It's an ongoing challenge in this experience because we're living with other humans. And for me, I can feel other people's fear. So sometimes like I struggle with, is this my fear or is this like the collective's fear? Is it someone else's fear that I picked up on? And I think a lot of people they're not sure like where it's coming from, right? For me, when I was leaving corporate, I was blessed very miraculously with abundance that allowed me to leave, but it was just enough to leave. And I had established a little bit of money to leave, but that I could have blown through that money really quick. So, and it was funny because the week I was going to give my notice, this health thing came in. And so that was like a test because I could have easily just chosen to not do it and stayed there, which would have brought me, some stability and comfort while I was going through all that. But I chose to do it anyway. So I think that the taking leaps of faith is the only way we will live a big, expansive, abundant life. And I have to tell myself that every day because I feel like I take a lot of risks and a lot of leaps of faith. And sometimes it leaves me in a very isolated place because when you take a leap of faith, you can't expect other people to understand. You can't even expect it to make sense. Usually it doesn't make sense to the logical mind, but the heart knows. And everybody's life is so different. What I believe is our soul picks certain lessons, right? And that's why everybody's life looks a little different, right? Everybody wonders, like, people are looking for this formula. There's no formula for the courage to be happy, right? It's a unique journey for everyone. But in my experience, a lot of these leaps of faith, like leaving corporate, at that pinnacle moment where you have to jump off the cliff, you have to look back at your past with ease and with contentment of just that was then. And that's not who I am anymore. And when you leap, you realize that you're leaping into not the unknown. I want everybody to change that. You're leaping into infinite possibilities.
I love that. I love that. Thanks for that correction because I'm going to have to borrow that one, Lo. It's just so many of us do say like, oh, I took that leap into the unknown. And I'd rather live in that world of possibility. We have very similar backgrounds in that sense. I pride myself of just being a courageous person. And just that's why the name of the podcast, the name of my business, it's the courage to be. And how do you fill it in? It used to be the courage to be happy, and it's transition. It's evolved now because I feel like it's not just about courage and being happy. It's about the courage to be, and you fill in the blank, like your journey is going to give you courage to be, I don't know, powerful, inspirational, fill in the blank. We are each searching for different dreams to be fulfilled, and it's going to require different types of courage. This is so juicy. I have several questions coming in with this. I love this idea. I definitely have to write that one, and of just jumping into a world of possibility, because so many of us get frozen in that fear. That's usually, like you said, it's the brain, it's the reptilian brain or the amygdala. That's the part that keeps us safe versus the heart. And in my opinion, the heart always wins. Follow whatever desire was planted in your heart. And that's your desire to nurture, to take care of it. Like that seed is planted there. And I love that you're talking about this unwavering trust. How can we build that muscle of trust so that it can override the fear?
This is the big work. Okay. So the biggest piece with this is I really don't know how else to say it other than we have to believe, we have to know and believe that we are a soul in a human body. And what we mean by a soul is we are an infinite, spiritual, eternal being having a human experience that is a fractal of divine source, consciousness, God, right? And, I think humans struggle so much because we have this physical that we live in two different worlds that are merged as one in the human experience. That's why we call it like Earth School. It's like we're here to learn lessons and be tested again and again, right? With these leaps of faith and having this unwavering faith. Faith, like if we don't have any trust that we are a soul and that we're connected to this infinite field of consciousness that is of love and light, if we really let ourselves believe that it's just darkness, that all the dark things that we do see happen in the world is the truth, if we don't believe that love consciousness is real, we'll never take leaps of faith. We'll never do anything, really. People will stay and live very small lives. And we know that at the end of one's life, no one really knows when that's coming, but at the end, so many people live with so much regret, right? And it's often from the things that they didn't do and the risks they didn't take and the courage they did not activate within themselves. So to me, one has to come up with what is their faith. What do they have faith in, right? Because if this is it, I used to say this when I was a child, if this is all that there is, that I'm just this human in this body and I die, then what would I be inspired to do in general in this lifetime if I believed this was it, right? So it's like, there is something to be said for activating and really stepping into what we think our legacy is supposed to be here, right? Because we all touch and meet so many people, but what do we want people to be impacted by when it comes to any interaction they have with us? Like even the person that we go to the coffee shop with versus, or that we meet at the coffee shop, if you will, versus like you and I having this deep conversation. I think the lack of faith comes from people not really honoring what they are, whether they believe it or not. And we're looking for religion to tell us that we're souls, and we're looking for all this physical confirmation, right? If I don't see it, how can I believe it? My life is a testament of seeing things, like believing in things before I see it, and then it comes to fruition, right? People call it manifesting, but where do we think all that comes from? I would even say like connecting more with our emotions versus burying them. Like my life is a testament of having to be in my emotions and learning the power in that to create and manifest from there. So the only way to have faith is to believe in something that's bigger than us and to also know who we are, right? And I know that most people live from their wounds, from this physical experience that we have, whether it's things that happened when they were younger or different experiences. Believe me, I've been there. I still have challenges that I have to overcome with all of that, with situations, because the human experience is about duality. It's about having both dark and light. But if we don't have like for example, if someone listening right now has a leap of faith ahead of them that they could choose, it's picturing like a fork in the road, and it's picturing like there's this, and again, even that's an illusion, but like there's this easy, more controlled route I could take, or there's this path that seems really illuminated, but I'm not really sure what's down there, but it does feel like there's a lot of possibility there. And that to me is the choice we have every single day. Like, it's not just, oh, these big milestones in life. It's like every day is a fork in the road to pick this like easy, seemingly controllable outcome, which we know we really don't have. And then this other path that's kind of mystical and magical and almost like sparkly, like it's glistening. And which path do you want to walk down becomes the test of faith.
I love that. And there are so many things that are showing up for me because I want to kind of go back. We're going to go a little bit back and forth with conversation because I want to ask you different questions. You mentioned before, well, I'll come back to this one because you mentioned both of these before. So when you were challenged leaving corporate, and I love that you made reference to this. I do believe that when you have a desire and you really want to step into it, in this case for you, it was I'm leaving corporate and going off on my own. And then you were tested with a health issue to see if like, ooh, should I still do it? Should I not? Because I can completely relate to this. This happened to me when I left corporate. The plan was for me to leave corporate and use the security of my husband's benefits, medical benefits. He was also in corporate as an art director. And then a month before I was supposed to quit, they say that he is either going to be let go of or he has to move to Detroit. And I'm thinking to myself, like, no, that we were living in New York City at the time. And I'm like, that can't happen. It's not supposed to be you. It's supposed to be me. I'm not staying here any longer. That desire was really, really there, but it was the universe testing me like, well, how badly do you want it? Like, are you still going to go through, even though the circumstances don't look exactly how you would like them to look like? And in your case was the same thing. You're leaving corporate, you have, your money saved up, there's a little bundle, and then boom, you get hit with a health issue. Again, it's that path of security, or do I go into the light of possibility, even though I'm not quite sure what to do right now, and there's this obstacle in the way, which is a health issue? What was the reward for you? Because you chose possibility, even though it might have been scary, you had a health issue, you don't know if you can financially overcome all of this.
Yes.
What were the fears, and then what was the reward? Because I also do believe that the universe favors the brave. I've always said that the universe favors the brave. And if you take that path of possibility and light, you must have been rewarded. So what was the reward despite the fear and the way?
The universe really does reward the brave, and bravery, courage comes in all different forms, and it comes in the smallest decisions to the big decisions. It's not just the big decisions, right? And when you're making these leaps like I was, you don't know, you're not really sure. And again, you're kind of alone sometimes, like on an island making this choice. You can't make the choice expecting support from every single person you meet, because everyone is projecting all the time their own fear, right? Like, we're all in any conversation, we're putting ourselves in that person's shoes and being like, oh, I could never do that, or oh, I would never do that, or oh God, that sounds, so you're off to, even to add that as a layer onto these moments, these leaps of faith. It's a whole other, there's a lot of layers to it, because you often are very alone in that decision. In my case, it's like I was very one with God in that decision, right? And so the rewards, well, the first part was I manifested. I like that word because it just came from what I created. I made the most money I've ever made in my life in 1 year. I made triple what I was making in corporate on my own. And amidst a lot of chaos, like the health stuff, I had other personal things going on. And it was just the universe trying to show me, because think about it, like anything we're here to do, we have to be able to go through it first to then teach it, right? So the universe, God was trying to show me that we do really live in an abundant universe full of possibilities, but we have to meet the universe halfway, which I did. I chose to do that, feeling very isolated and alone in that choice. And it was very rewarding. I also felt like a whole portal opened up where I met so many, what I call soul family, like people that I would have never met without going down that path. So many wonderful people that are dear friends of mine, collaborators, people that new clients. So it felt like a whole community opened up for me from that decision. I probably met last year, in my first year on my own, 200 people that I would have never met without that decision. So those two things alone, amidst many other things, were the most rewarding. I mean, there were so many times, to this day, there still is so many miracles. I'm a believer in miracles, right? And a miracle is defined as like a shift from fear to love, right? But really, what a miracle is witnessing and seeing the magic in one's life, synchronicity, how one moment, one decision you make could open up a whole path, a whole world of possibility and opportunities. So those were very tangible things that I experienced from that choice.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that story, because I'm sure many of our listeners are stuck at some point of their life. Like you said, we go through different levels. It's going to keep on showing up. There's going to be other decisions. That was a big one, like you said, leaving corporate and having that faith and that trust, and then being rewarded into that world of possibility. It all kind of relates. I find this fascinating with Steve Jobs' commencement speech in Stanford back in 2005. If you've never listened to that speech, go ahead and search for it. But one of the three things that he talks about was connecting the dots in our life, and that we cannot connect the dots moving forward. And it's an important thing to notice. Like, it would have been easier for Lo to make that decision of leaving corporate if she knew what the reward was beforehand. Like, if someone would have told her with a crystal ball, say, hey, you're going to make triple your income in the next year, and you're going to make 200 new amazing soul family people in your life, you would have been like, yeah, I'm all in. Yeah, sign me up. But there's no guarantee. Like, no one can guarantee it. Like, we tend to not make like, we don't take action until we have some sort of certainty, and it doesn't work that way. It works the other way around. Can you talk a little bit about that, Lo, of just...
Yes. Here's what I will say. I think the very practical tool I can give people is, one of the biggest pieces is to use your voice and to speak things into existence. And so I swear to you, in December of 2020, which would have been 3 months before I left my corporate America job, I set a goal, and I would say out loud every day, I am creating my business and making X amount of dollars in it. And I ended up making that money. Like, I could not make this up. I ended up making a little bit over what I asked for. And that's what I've taught in my abundance workshops. Like, I spoke into existence something that happened. Now, the way that we speak things into existence and the intention behind it is so much. It's really the intention behind what we speak into existence is how it comes to life. So if I just wanted to make more money, to have more material things, that the universe doesn't judge, but it's like, it's not really in alignment for me. A lot of why I wanted to make that money was to be able to teach abundance consciousness and to activate more levels of freedom in my life, and to be generous with people around me, because I love to be generous. It's a big love language of mine. I love to be generous with others. So I was very clear on that, and money will just come. Money just wants to go where it's safe. And when we have a tumultuous relationship with it, why would it want to come in? And then I also created this portal for money to enter, for opportunities to enter, where I said to the universe, arms wide open, I'm open to opportunities now. And my energy wasn't bottled up in a day-to-day job where I couldn't accept that money coming in. So the leap of faith was trusting that there was more money on the other side than just the consistent amount of money that I was making in corporate, right? And lo and behold, because I took that leap of faith, that was how I was rewarded. And that could happen for other people in other ways, right? That could happen in physical health, that could happen in relationships, that could happen in love, right? It could happen in creativity, travel, home, whatever, all these different categories. For me, it manifested in money, which further drove me down my purpose, because I know I'm here to teach about abundance. Well, that was what came out of that learning. I didn't know that at the time, but I realized, oh, I don't have super tumultuous relationship with money the way other people do. That must be why I was able to take this risk and kind of just blindly, again, what people would think I'm crazy, Tanya. People would think I'm crazy with how much I trust God, truly. And I know we have all different ways we talk about God, and that gets tricky, but I feel like that's part of the challenge Earth is going through right now, is that we don't talk about inner faith. And what do we have faith in? Like, we can't just talk about manifesting and all these words that keep God out of it.
And it's interesting that you bring that word up, because I used to get very triggered with the word God. So for anyone else, and that's just my Catholic upbringing,
Oh yeah,
in Spain,
totally.
where they just shoved and indoctrinated, like
Yep.
you must study this, and everything was just so
You'll be
confusing,
punished, and
like
yeah,
it wasn't until I started questioning my beliefs, like, why do we have to celebrate Christmas on this day?
sure.
And why does it, what is the meaning behind it? And what, you want to question your own beliefs, that have
Yes.
been passed down to you. And so
Yeah.
the word God really triggered me. It still triggers me a little bit, and I'd rather use other words, but that's me
Sure.
personally. Other people embrace it and love it, no matter what your faith is
Yeah.
or your place of worship, but so if you do get triggered with the word God, I invite you to substitute it by source, spirit, the universe, whatever
Yep.
makes you feel comfortable. Because like you're saying, Lo, we're in this new age of speaking, these words, but we also have to remember that there's something bigger out of us. And whether you want to call it the field, universal consciousness,
Sure.
God, source,
Sure.
spirit,
All
fill
the
in the
same.
blank. But because you're talking about being so connected, what are some tips of living from a place? Because I think it's all connected with faith and co-creating with spirit, with source, with God. What are some tips of jumping into that realm? Because I battle a lot with, I feel like I'm 50-50%, like I have my intuitive, creative, I consider myself a very intuitive person, very creative, very spiritual too. And then I have my logic side. And so there's this battle constantly going on. And when I go into fear mode and wanting to control things, and I need certainty and I need answers. And then I go into my type A personality, everything has to
Yeah.
be done and da 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 da. But when I've been able to operate from that place of co-creating with spirit, letting go, trusting, living in possibility, then everything starts flowing. And I've observed this in this last year of just, instead of like, I started the year planning what my business was going to look like, but I also made a commitment in my journaling and in my meditations in the morning that I was going to co-create with spirit. It was kind of like, spirit, you are the CEO. Just tell me how I'm supposed to operate right now.
Yeah.
And things kept showing up, like
Right.
a course, a class, a person, and I just kept
Yep.
saying, yes. Okay. Yes. And I had ideas. Like I wanted to do this women's summit at the end of the year, in the fall. And suddenly a podcast was thrown my way, nope, you're going to start a podcast right now. And I'm like, well, it is part of
Right.
my dream list, but not now. Like it was supposed to be the summit. And then I keep getting that, I'm like, okay, well, we're going in that direction then.
Yeah.
So how do you co-create with spirit? How has that worked for you? How do you step into that world of synchronicity and
Oh,
possibility?
my favorite topic. Well, the first thing I would offer to anyone listening is, what would it look like for you to believe you're always taken care of by spirit? That the most powerful force in the universe is taking care of you. I really would ask people to reflect and ponder with that. Because to be honest, Tanya, the way I make these decisions is I don't look to other humans to take care of me. I don't trust other humans to do that fully, right? How could I? And how could anyone? Because everyone's dealing with different things. And it's not their job. It's like nobody owes anyone anything. And it's not people's job to take care of us. And because humanity has been so disconnected from source, spirit, God, as the force and the energy and the consciousness that is taking care of us, that we're directly connected to, we look to other things to take care of us. And then we struggle to take care of ourselves, right? So this notion that I'm always taken care of, I have a profound, deep belief in that. Even in my darkest days, I somehow knew and know that I am taken care of by the most powerful, loving force there is, all that is. And I would just ask people to start there, because if you if we don't believe that we are taken care of and that we are guided, we'll never notice the synchronicities. We'll never continue to say yes. I think one thing that stood out to me that you said, Tanya, was I keep saying yes when I am guided, because the soul, even, hearing messages from spirit or feeling those nudges, they're calm, they're quieter. The ego is extremely loud, right? And so because the ego is loud, it easily drowns out those nudges. So it is like a choice with our beautiful free will that we're all given on this earth. We're given free will. And that's why we can be shown these different paths, but we have to keep saying yes. So I just love that you said that. I picked up on that, noticing the synchronicities. I would offer people to journal about, first of all, it's about believing that things are miracles, even if they're small, right? So like the other day, I had to get this payment in before the end of the year for tax purposes for next year. And I swear there was like an issue in communication, and the processing was the day of the processing of it, they made a mistake. And somehow my vendor, I got in touch with them an hour before it was processed, because they still had an hour to make changes. And we were able to make the changes before the final processing of it, where I would have been like, it would have been really tricky to fix. We couldn't have fixed it. How do I think that happened? What was the force that helped that happen? So it's not like it was just taken care of, but it was divinely guided through synchronicity, through something that we can't make sense of, but it's there. It's the underlying thing that's running our lives, so that I was able to get in touch with that person an hour before the processing of my final like payroll for the year. And it was fixed. And it was actually quite easy. It was like a moment of panic, and then it was fixed within 3 minutes. And I have an inner guidance system. I have intuitive gifts where I'll hear like, just be patient. It'll be taken care of. This is going to be taken care of. This will, and I have to choose to trust that voice, because the ego will be like in chaos, like, wait, what?
Yes.
So I just choose every day to trust in that voice, and that somehow, some way it will be taken care of. And then to your point, when you look back, you realize, wow, like how taken care of things are. I think that we're all the child we once were inside. We just grow up and we're in bigger human bodies, but we're still children. And this concept of feeling taken care of by spirit, by God conscious, by the, most powerful consciousness that there is, it's life-changing, because then you start to look within to find the guidance versus looking outside of you. That's what I mean by feeling connected to your soul, which is a fractal of spirit, which is deeply connected. I mean, people have profound experiences all the time in meditation, and they can't explain it. How do we explain that? And it's not imagination. Imagination is one aspect of how we create, but a lot of it is because we're connected to this deep, mysterious force of consciousness.
I love it. Oh my God. We're going to have to do a second episode, because I could keep on going. I'd love to talk about like synchronicity and, like just all these different aspects of this. There's two things that came out from what you just mentioned. How do you calm down your mind and that ego and that loudness and those moments? Like when you were about to do that transaction, things weren't working out. How do you calm yourself down? Because that's all related again to fear. It requires courage. Like you're saying, smaller, bigger. How do we deal? Because this is an ongoing work. This is not learning about abundance, healing your wounds, like all these things is ongoing work. It's not a one-stop shop. I always tell that to my clients, like working on money mindset, working on abundance. How do you heal it? Or how do you stop? Or how do you shift that energy to reconnect to what's true?
So first thing is I will tune into what is true. I will always remember what is true, and that everything is solvable. Even the worst things are solvable in some way. But I also have like an unwavering faith that I come back to, where it's like, I just believe. Probably some people would think I'm naive, but I just believe that things will always work out. And in those moments, I will tune in, I will pause and take a deep breath, and I will tune in. And every time I do that, I will hear one word, which is trust. Trust. There's like this, the higher realms are always trying to get us to trust deeper as humans, because we don't trust anything, and that most of us are walking around the world not trusting anything. And so in that moment, I will tune back into the truth that I trust we are, living within a loving and favorable universe that really is trying to help us every step of the way. And I remember it was like 2:20 and the payroll was going to process at 3, and I was waiting on somebody else to call me back. And I just paused and I said, they're going to call me. And I even back to the speaking into existence, the outcome I desired, I do that. And then they did. I swear and I had to wait about 15 to 17 minutes, I remember. And I was like, oh my God, like, I really hope this works out. I'm trusting that it will. And then the guy called me and he's like, it's done. It's taken care of, Lauren. We're all good. I'm like, oh. And, it was 2:45. So, if I had spiraled in panic and worried every second of that time frame, it probably could have had a different outcome. But this goes back to energy, which I know we can't see, but everyone feels. It's making sure that we're aligning our energy with the most optimal outcome possible that we can. And the way to do that is through pausing, taking a deep breath, anchoring back into trust, and believing. I think one of the most life-changing things for anyone listening that I pray you take away from this episode is that you start to believe and see that you are taken care of. And the way you see it is through the synchronicities, through how an opportunity comes in tomorrow, or you meet someone, or you're in a store or a coffee shop and you overhear something perfect that is for you, and you don't know how but like, you start to open up to what is already happening, whether we notice it or not. Right, Tanya? It's like, it's a choice to just notice it, but it's already happening. Every single event is connected, and every single event is to teach us a lesson and to bring us further down our path. Right. And so I'm just a believer that we have to choose to not be in resistance to that, because it's already naturally happening. One of my favorite quotes ever is from the author Roald Dahl, who was very connected, I think, to the mystical world. And he said, those who don't believe in magic will never find it. And
I love that one.
Like, everything is about what we believe in. Right? That's why there isn't one religion that has the absolute truth. Absolutely not. And when you study them, they all connect. But it's really, that's why I think we're going through this time, to your point, Tanya, of this spiritual awareness and awakening and what we call new age. It's because we're realizing that we are co-creating with all these forces, and the forces have our best interest at heart. But if we are our own worst enemy, that does contribute to the outcome we experience, So that's the motivation for healing and all of that, to your point. But I really believe that if people start with cultivating a belief that they are taken care of and guided in every moment of their life, magical things unfold.
I do love living in the magic. That's why I wanted to pause in that and talk to me a little bit about carving out time for silence, because like you said, the ego is really loud. And if we don't carve out time for silence and to let our mind wander, it's very hard to hear that intuition and that, like that, those hits, those downloads. Can you tell us a little bit about how you operate and carve out time?
Yeah, for sure. I find the most helpful tool is journaling in silence, because I think it allows us to get a lot out and process a lot. And then when I go back and read things, I find nuggets of wisdom and what I believe. I mean, we all are channels for source, right? And sources, when you say co-create with source, it's like we're the vessel, we're the human vessel that has a voice and has emotions and all these things to bring the messages through. And so sometimes when I look back at what I journaled in those silent moments, I realize that God, spirit, was speaking through to me. And it could be a phrase, it could be a word. I think disconnecting from every technology source that we can, because we're picking up on other people's thinking and it's getting clouded with what we trust and believe. And we're taking on other people's truths as our own truth subconsciously by just consuming content. We really are, right? That's why this is kind of connected to abundance consciousness, but like the fact that the frequency of your company, the courage to be happy in this podcast, has a very high vibrational frequency to it that I would argue is already magnetic to money and abundance, because it's putting out, let's call it a positive vibration, if you will. Right. And I know people see people every day that are making money with bad intentions, but we can't worry about what other people are doing, number one. And number two, there are always corrections to that balance, karma, whatever we want to call it. We have to worry about our intention for what we're trying to call in. And I think the only way to find, like you said, our deep intention for what we're trying to create and call in is in silence, in that one-on-one conversation with ourselves and whatever we believe in, right? When it comes to spirit. But I try really hard to have a lot of that time alone, because I think that's how I create the life that I really desire and am here to create, versus just mimicking what other people are doing, right? And a lot of people, I think, reach a lot of heartbreak, and kind of like those forks in the road come because they're trying to mimic what someone else did, looking for a formula, and it doesn't work for them because they're not using their unique gifts. They're not connecting with their self. And so then we all wonder why it doesn't work out the way it did for somebody else, right? So we can learn from a lot of different sources, books, teachers, guides. I mean, you and I are both teachers for people, right? But we have to have discernment, my new favorite word and my word for 2023. We have to have discernment with what we take on as our truth.
Love it. Wow. That is so beautiful. When you journal and when you carve out those moments of silence, because I'm a big journaler too. So I just like was nodding my head. I didn't want to jump in. I didn't want to interrupt. I completely identify with this. I've been doing it for decades. I first started with morning pages with Julia Cameron, like I do want to give her credit with that. And when do you journal? And when do you reread your journal? I'd be curious to just know about that.
That's a great question. I journal all the time. It's not just in the morning. It's not just at night. Honestly, the biggest time I recommend journaling is when you feel an emotional wave coming on.
That's a great tip.
Because we get very lost in our emotions. Our emotions, I just want to speak on this a little bit. Our emotions are part of the human experience. Other dimensions do not have emotions. When we're not in a human body, we don't have that. That's part of the reason we come into this body. It's part of the connection with Earth. And so people often hate their emotions and struggle with them. Why do I feel this way? And also, if it's not positive, like we have no problem with like the blissful emotions, right, Tanya? But the dark ones, despair, pain, fear,
sadness, grief.
Oh, we want to escape. And most of us escape through something, right? Whether it's food or alcohol or just burying it through social situations, whatever it is. So,
or can I add to that too, Lo, getting busy, because we don't want to feel those emotions. I've just recently gone through that, it's been a rough month, and it's just like, I don't want to feel this grief. I don't want to feel this sadness. Let me get myself busy, so that I don't have to feel it, or you might emotionally know that you're in a bad relationship or that you're in a job that you hate, but you're like, well, it's okay, and you make up all these excuses. But I just had to interject with that, of like getting busy too, besides coping with like whatever, drugs, alcohol, sex, purchasing, getting in debt, whatever, we fill in the blank, because we all do one way or another.
Yeah. And I've learned in my own spiritual path that it's because we're trying to escape the emotional aspect of being human. But that is where our greatest lessons come, our teachers, our power comes from our emotions. And also our emotions are what charge what we want to create for our lives. So when I am feeling a wave come on, right, even during the happy times as well. It's like journaling and capturing those moments, I think, is really critical. It's like you become the student of you as the teacher, because we're teaching ourselves constantly, and we have to kind of flip-flop between being the student and the teacher with ourself. So journaling through emotional waves, whatever that looks like for someone, is really, I think, the most liberating practice, but also a practice where so much wisdom can come when you reflect on that journal entry or whatever. When I reflect, when I look back, it depends. I like to look back a week later, sometimes months later. Sometimes I'll find old journals, and I know another synchronicity is like the finding of something and reading something about where I was then and how far I've come. It is the hero's journey, the human experience. It is about, like, I love this phrase, we're not looking for the one, we've become the one. I think that's really what we're all trying to do at the end of the day. It's like, we're not looking for these things and people and status and money, all these things that are outside of us, but we're looking for what's within. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. And most humans don't do it. So I would just say that if you look at your life as a movie, how do you want it to end up?
That's great. Yes. That's awesome. I love hearing all this. And as you're speaking of synchronicities, and we'll wrap it up now, like I said, I want to do a whole other episode about synchronicities and how to live in this word of magic and of possibility. But do you track your synchronicities?
Yes.
Like as you're saying these things?
Yes. I write things down instantly as they happen, because I'll never believe it after. So I have to write things down that are, the point of magic, the point of synchronicity is that it almost is unbelievable. And the mind will immediately try to break it down. Like, how did that happen? The point is just to bask in the magic of it and to move on with our day. And that's why, like, even that small synchronicity I told you about last week with the payroll stuff, that's what informs me that I'm always taking care of the next time, because I remember that happened. So why couldn't that happen again? So by journaling and writing it down instantly without overthinking it, because by the time you think about it, it's gone and then you forget, right? So it helps me when I am in a rough time or another challenge comes, it helps me because I'll look back and remember that. And then sometimes, like, just review, I call it miracle mindset, like documenting the miracles throughout the day. Even having like an energy burst, that's a miracle. Like, all of a sudden you feel just like a burst of energy and you go and do something or finish something or whatever. That's a miracle. So I think it's expanding people's consciousness about what they see as a miracle, right? There's like really big things that can happen, and then there's also very small. That's what I think it is. It's like this balance of the word synchronicity, which is all those connecting of the dots. And then there's the magic piece where it's like this thread, this golden thread of magic that you can see is guiding you in your life. And that's where we get into angels, and we get into all the forces that are rooting for us. They're just asking us to root for us.
That's awesome. Yes. Yeah. Are there any synchronicity books or anything related to the subject? Like, what's a book that comes to mind right now? I'm looking for some good reads.
Signs. There's a book called Signs that a woman wrote that I think was really beautiful. And it's about how the universe speaks to us in signs.
Love that.
Yeah. I also think another book I would share in general is any of Marianne Williamson's work.
Yeah, I think do love
beautiful. Yeah. I read a lot of her prayers, and I think they're so beautiful and neutral. And I know sometimes she goes down the certain languages used, but she really has channeled a lot of prayers that anyone can say, and you can modify them. And I would offer people another practice, Tanya, which is coming up with their own prayer practice. We don't have to talk to God like, we don't have to talk to spirit, talk to God like, in this formal, like we're looking to be good. We really, in my most profound moments where I have felt the presence of God, is when I was screaming like at the top of my lungs, like, why is this happening? I swear. And I heard the most, like, God is really asking us to speak more honestly, like out loud, about what we're going through. Because when we speak things into existence, when we speak out loud what's happening, we can transcend it, right? But if it's just in the mixing bowl of the mind, to your point earlier, it just sits there, and it directs our choices at the subconscious level, as we all, more and more people are learning. So to me, like, I think coming up with this prayer practice where it has those moments of silence, journaling, just sitting there, but talking to God. We don't have to talk to God in a formal way. We need to talk to God like we would anyone that we trust, and be honest about what we're going through. Like, there's times when I've said, like, I literally don't know how I'm going to get through this. When I had the heart thing, I had to admit what broke my heart, who broke my heart. And I was saying it out loud. And I swear I had the most profound miracles in the week after that. So God is looking for us to, like, admit these things and let ourselves admit them, because once we admit them, we become free of them. It's like we open the cage that we built for ourselves.
Yeah. And I love how you're explaining this, of voicing it out loud and taking it, because I'm a big believer too, like abundance, money, everything's energy, in this world, and money and abundance is all energy too.
Yes.
We are, like you said, souls in a human body that's energy, like everything is energy. Right. So how do we move these energies when we're stuck? Through movement, through voicing it out loud. Like, I'm going to add that too. And it's funny, I have to share this story as you're saying it, because we're talking about synchronicity. So last Friday, I was sitting at home. My husband's not here. And sometimes on Fridays we'll go on a date lunch, and I was really craving going out for lunch at this particular place, to Tea House here in Santa Fe. And I was like, oh man, I miss it. I haven't gone on a date day with him in a while, or I haven't even gone out for lunch in a while. And I had finished everything work-wise. And I'm like, who could I call? Like, I'm trying to go through, it was too short notice. It was like 10 a.m. on a Friday morning, and it's like, everyone's already busy. So I'm trying to go through my head. Who can I invite? I'd love to have a lunch with someone. I'm missing my husband to go on a date lunch. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go on my own, and I'm going to go with my journal. I'm just going to go journal. It's a date with self, and that's what I said. I'm going on a date with myself. And I believe I voiced it out loud. I don't think I just kept it in my mind. Sometimes I'll keep it in my mind, but I'm like, who can I go to lunch with, And nothing showed up. Went down there. As soon as I opened the back door, I didn't even go through the main entrance where the hostess is there. I was going to go through the back door. As soon as I open up, one of my close friends is sitting there with her baby and her other daughter. And we just interlock eyes, and we've been texting back and forth all week and trying to connect with each other. She's busy, I'm busy. And I look at her and I'm like, are you here with anyone? And she's like, no, just with the kids. And I'm like, may I sit with you, and join you for lunch? And she's like, yes. And I was like, I just looked up and I said, thank you, Spirit, for sending me the right person to eat lunch with, it's those moments of living in that magic. Both of us, it was for both of us, because we'd been texting all that week. We couldn't find time. I'm like, do we meet up at this time? Do we meet up at that other time? And it was just meant for us. So just a reminder for everyone, like, step into that space of possibility, step into that place of trust. And Lo, wow, your energy, yes, you are a bubble of inspiration, and your voice. I told you from the first time I met you, I'm like, you have the perfect voice for a podcast. I love the depth of it. And I can just feel the vibration of it, so thank you for being with us today, for sharing. And as we close up here, what would be 3 pearls of wisdom that you could leave our listeners with?
Yeah. You are always taken care of by the most powerful force in the universe. I would offer, it's not leaping into the unknown, it's leaping into infinite possibilities. And the last would be, choose the path that is illuminated.
Oh, love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for being here with us and for honoring us with your
I'm so
time, with your
grateful.
wisdom.
Thank you for you. Thank you for expressing your gifts and spreading such incredible light in the world. Like you said, there's never enough of us. So thank you for choosing this path and leading by example. And I'm so grateful we connected, and I'm excited to stay connected and support you. But it's an honor to be on your podcast, and thank you for starting it because we need you.
Thank you. I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. As my way to thank you, I'd like to invite you to join our next cohort of Money Magic Miracles, my signature program that took 25 women to manifest over $1.2 million collectively in just 8 weeks. If you'd like to raise your vibration and be in this kind of energy so that you become more attractive and magnetic, then I highly encourage you to join us. You can sign up with the link in the show notes. Doors close Sunday at midnight, and I look forward to seeing you there.